Hey there, fellow streakers. We're back with you again, and it is Memorial Day weekend. We are just looking forward to the summer and everything that the summer has in store for us.
Memorial Day weekend is one of my favorite weekends. Labor Day is nice, but Labor Day is always a little sad because to me, it's the end of the summer. Summer's over. Memorial Day, it's the beginning of summer.
Are you ready for the kids to go back to school, though, when we hit that particular
Okay, yeah,
time?
by Labor Day, you're kind of like, all right, maybe let's bring on fall in school. But Memorial Day, there's all this anticipation
Yes.
that this amazing summer is ahead of you.
Which is what we want to talk about. And actually, for the month of June, what we're going to be focusing on is really the times and seasons of things. In other words, there are, just like what we mentioned there's times and seasons, like summer is one of those seasons, and times that you do certain things, and that if you look past it and go to a different place, you can miss a lot of things. And then on the same note, that you've got the times and seasons of when school starts or the holidays or any of those times and seasons. So what we thought we'd do is start off with a little bit of a story and Jamie, what you've been experiencing a little bit. And then we'll get into talking a little bit about how you set your streaks in such a way that it complements the times and seasons.
Yes. So I was dropping my son off yesterday. He just finished up 8th grade, and he was doing, as an ambassador at the school, he had volunteered to be a person that waves to all the new 6th graders as they do a parade. He was welcoming in the 6th graders into middle school. And I was just thinking about this concept of times and seasons because it's an end of a season for my son. Middle school is the end of a season, and high school is the start of a new one. But then at the same time, the juxtaposition of these 6th graders coming in, the start of their new season. And as I was driving, I was also thinking, we are in the process of moving, and I've been spending a huge amount of time getting my house ready to put on the market. And I'm just going to say this, not a lot of people feel this way maybe, but I know that I do. I have loved getting my house ready to show because it's this point in time when you leave the house and someone comes to look at it, for that moment in time, your house is as perfect as you can get it. You've got everything perfectly arranged. You've closed all the lids on the toilets. You've cleaned the house. You've fluffed all the pillows.
There's lines in the carpet from where you vacuumed.
There's lines in the carpet. You know, this feeling of I'm closing the door and for this moment in time, this house looks as perfect as I can get it to look. And I was thinking back to when I have 7 children, and as a mom, when all of my kids were home, how often I wanted just that moment in time where the whole house was clean at once. But when you're a mom of young children, no matter how many young children you have, even just one your house is never totally perfect at once, ever. In fact, I remember one time walking into a store, and it had this sign that said, "The house can be clean or I can be clean, but I can't have both at the same time." And I remember as a young mom thinking, that is so true. I can't have both. And as a young mom, it's very, very difficult to ever have your house be in this state of perfection.
Right.
And I thought about it and I'm like, why? So I was also thinking, I've been talking to my mom a lot and thinking about your mom a lot. And they're in the time and season that their children are gone. They're both living alone. And they both are mothers of large families. And making that transition from having this time in your life where you had all these people around you to now this time in your life where it's just you. And I was thinking about them and I thought, their house can be perfect all the time right now. Yet the feeling is, I miss when I had children home. And so it just made me think about this time and seasons concept that we can't have everything at one time. It's that you can have a perfect house, but what would I have to do to have a perfect house? I had to make my family leave, and I had to make them not touch anything. That was how I got the perfect house. And so as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about how streaking has helped me recognize how I can keep going in these times and seasons. So I was thinking about a mom or a woman who's had a career and she has a baby and she decides to put her career on hold for a little while. For this season of time, she's decided to stay home and take care of her child. A streak can help you not have to put that whole season on a shelf and never look at it again.
The season of being a professional.
Yeah, the season of being a professional. Thank you for... So you recognize that... So the amazing thing about times and seasons is that when you're in a season, if you try too hard to ignore that season or to force another season into that season, you can miss what that season offers. And so, for example, a woman who's had a career and then decides for a time to put the career on hold and stay home with a child, you can feel like you're acknowledging, you're like, okay, this is the season I'm in. I'm going to take this time with this season with this child and all that is offered from having a young baby in your life. And it can feel like you have to take the other part of your life, that career, and just put it on a shelf and not even look at it. And that can be hard sometimes to look at it and think, well, I don't want to completely ignore that. Streaking can allow you the opportunity to say, I don't have to put it completely on a shelf and ignore it. I can have a little part of it still be a part of my life. I can have 1 or 2 professional streaks, things that I set that kind of help me stay in that world a little bit while I'm acknowledging that this is a season and I'm going to focus on this season. And I was thinking about it as in the sense of me, I'm kind of in the opposite position right now, where my chosen career has been to stay home and raise my children. And now those children are starting to leave. And I'm looking ahead and thinking, what am I going to do? And I haven't been in a career world. And so sometimes thinking about going out into that new environment can be very overwhelming and can also feel like I'm so far behind that world. I haven't been in that world. I've been in my home world. And I was thinking a streak helps me with that too, because it allows me to start small, to recognize the season that I was in and that I enjoyed that season. I took the opportunity to fully be a part of that season of raising children. And then as that season comes to an end, I look at it and I think, okay, I'm embarking in a new season, but I'm kind of starting from scratch, which I think a lot of us feel anytime we switch seasons. We go through something that's causing a big change in our life, and it can feel overwhelming or like you're you're way behind the game, or there's so much to learn, or any of those emotions that come with big change. And a streak, I've thought a lot about this. I'm like, okay, I can look at my life and think, what do I want to add to it now? And acknowledging the season I was in and starting small, start with a streak that allows me the time to adjust to thinking about my life in a different way. Does that make sense? Boy, I've rambled on for a bit there.
Oh, I think I've been actually mesmerized by what it is that you've been saying. So I've been listening intently, because I've also thought about what you have set up as streaks in regards to professional streaks. For example, looking at least one design element daily.
Right.
I mean, that is something that you started quite some time ago. I mean, how long have you had that streak of looking at least one design element daily? It's,
1,224 days.
Okay, so if that's 1,224 days, that's what, 3 years?
No, over 3 years.
So you've kind of had in the back of your mind that that your season is changing.
Right.
That you're moving from children being at home and the craziness and wonderfulness and the non-perfect household is there, and you're looking at it and saying, okay, I'm switching seasons of life.
Switching seasons.
And now what is that going to look like? What is it that I love? Who is it that I want to be?
Right.
And in looking at who you want to be, then setting a streak necessary to do that. So as I look at what you were saying in regards to a man or a woman, because I can look at it on my side. The beautiful thing I think about our day and age is that either one of us could make this choice.
Right.
I could say, you know what, I want to be the stay-at-home dad. I don't have to give up my profession to be the stay-at-home dad. However, I do need to sacrifice enough of it so that I can stay focused on what it is that needs to happen here at home.
Right.
And what I'm going to do in order to keep my professional life not completely on the shelf is I'm going to write at least one sentence daily. I'm going to read at least one paragraph in a nonfiction book daily. that is the application of how I can keep balance in my life.
Right.
You know, we talk a lot about balance and what balance is and how balance works. As I listen to you describe so eloquently, really well done, hon. I just was mesmerized at you talking through this whole time.
That's good, because I was struggling to feel like, am I communicating? You know how when you have these pivotal thoughts and in your mind, and maybe, I don't know, do you guys all experience this, where you're sitting in the car and you kind of have this epiphany of thought and you're like, but then when you try to explain it to someone, you look at it and you're like, it was really clear and beautiful in my head.
And if it wasn't clear, that was clear and beautiful. Let's just put it that way. It was really
communicated that
because
way
I just thought about myself as far as, okay, so let's just switch for just a second. My primary role has been to provide for the family. Mm-hmm. You know, you and I agreed a long time ago that your primary role would be to be the CEO of the home, and I would be the providing the income, and we decided very deliberately to break those two things up.
Right, that's how we were going to do it.
And however, that could make it for me to very easily say, well, Jamie's raising the family. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to make sure I provide the income. Whereas I needed to be, and one of my B statements is I want to be an active, involved, conscientious father. And therefore, my streaks of contact at least one of my children daily, connect with one of my children daily, and we've talked a lot about this, but those helped me to keep the balance where the balance needed to be, which was in being a husband and a father. Because that was the other thing, is with our relationship, we wanted to continue to build that as well and not put that on the shelf. And I think what you said so eloquently is that streaking allows you the times and seasons of your life.
Exactly. Instead of fighting and thinking we have to do everything all the time, because I feel like one of the things that's in our world is we are visibly able to see so many things that so many people are doing, and the possibilities of the things that are happening in our world are really amazing. And it's amazing to look at, but also can be overwhelming. Yeah. As an individual to feel like, okay, there are so many things I want to be doing. And sometimes it's hard to differentiate there's things that I should be doing. And I think those shoulds are what's inside of us saying this innate understanding that life does have times and seasons. There's things that this is the only time that you can do this. And so as we were thinking about this summer season, one of the things I love about summer is that it's a season of freedom, that for this season I can feel, and my children, and I think there's this sense of freedom in people that for this period of time, for these, 8 weeks or however long we get, it's going to be warm out, and we have the freedom of maybe we don't have to get up at the same time, and we can go swimming, and we can eat differently. We can have barbecues. We can go on vacation. We're going to get leisure time. There's this season, but we know it's not life. We're not going to live this way the whole year. It's a season. We get this season to enjoy these things.
Why do we get that season is because there's not the schedule of school.
Right, because the schedule of school, that's really what changes it.
That's what it is. It changes. School's out for the summer. There's no schedule for school, and so there's flexibility in the schedule. I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, for the most part.
And I feel like the weather adds to that feeling of freedom. And so with that, it's recognizing that there's this season and there's things of this season that I don't want to miss because I love it. But I also look at it and think, so we talk about reading so often. I look at it and I'm like, okay, I want to spend some time reading, and I want the kids to spend some time reading, and recognizing, or other things that we have, like I've thought a lot about, and we've talked about this before, the math facts. You spend a lot of time in the year helping your kids learn these math facts, and then these things, if you don't keep reviewing them through the summer, you can slip back. Or if there's sports things or anything that anybody has been working on that you've reached a certain level on, if you stop doing that thing completely, you are going to lose a little bit of ground.
And it's difficult to start it up again.
Right. And so that's where I look at and I think streaks are through the summer are such a great opportunity to keep those things going.
Mm-hmm. Review at least one math fact daily.
Right.
Or reading. So speaking of reading, let's just go there for just a second. As you look at what I've noticed is that when our children are leaving school, or even in the professional realm, there's a lot of people who are feeling like the flexibility of summer will allow them to read more. And why do we feel like, not they, but why do we feel like we should be reading more? Because, it's a time that maybe I get to read some of the things that I want to read in the place where, on vacation, some of the leisure books that I've been looking forward to read, or maybe some of the business books or self-help books, or maybe you've been wanting to read streaking and it's just not on your list yet. There was a question. I was scanning through LinkedIn the other day, and this came up in my feed from one of my contacts. He says, I truly want to read more books. I feel like everyone's doing it. Well, everyone but me. I know why reading is beneficial. I mean, all successful people read loads of books and wake up at 4 a.m. each day, right? A little bit of tongue-in-cheek, a little sarcasm there. In all seriousness, I really do get motivated and intend to read all these amazing books that I see my network reading and sharing on my thread, but I struggle to make the time to read in my day-to-day schedule like I envision myself doing. Does this sound familiar?
Mm-hmm.
I've got a list of books I plan and hope to read. I do, capital D-O, read, just not as much as I'd like to. My question is less of why reading is good for you, but rather, and here comes the two questions, how do you make time to read new books regularly? Mm-hmm. And when do you do this in your daily schedule? So there's two things that are just real. I mean, I get real passionate about this because one of my streaks is to read at least one paragraph in a nonfiction book daily. And what I see with the two questions that he asks, how do you make time to read new books regularly? And when do you do this in your daily schedule? A streak is, I mean, that's the regular. I'm reading at least one paragraph daily, and it can be any time in the day.
Right.
It's agnostic to environment and to time and to everything else. Now, there is a little bit of a dependency.
Right. And that's one of the things that we were talking about as we prepare, as you go through these change of seasons, and we're heading into summer, and there's things that you do to keep your streaks going through the summer. And one of the things that we were going to talk about is look at the dependencies. Look at what your streaks are dependent upon. So if you have a streak of wanting to read. So I loved this question because he was saying so much of what we already know. It's like, I know the benefits of reading, and I want to be doing it more.
Notice
and
that right
there.
A B statement.
Yes,
I want to be what? I want to be a reader. I want to be more like the people in my network. I want to be successful like I see them. So there's that pointing. Mm-hmm. And now what do I need to do regularly in order to be that type of a person?
Right. And so part of it that I love about a streak, so one of the things I look at is I'm like, okay, you want to be a reader, set a streak to read a certain amount every day, whatever's laughably simple to you. And what will fall out of that, what you will look at as you set that streak is you start to think, what is that streak dependent upon? As you continue to have that streak, first of all, you're changing and you're thinking about reading every day. And now you're thinking, okay, I've got to have a book with me. Because you start to recognize times that you can read that maybe you didn't notice before. I'm waiting in line somewhere, or I'm sitting here waiting for my food to come. I can read for a little bit.
Right, and I think that's the beautiful part about electronic devices. There have been many times where I've had my phone with me and I'm waiting in a long line, or I find myself sitting at a table and waiting for maybe you or the kids or whatever, and I can pull it open and go right to where I want to read. And it's conscious. It's right at the front of my brain. It doesn't matter. I don't have to have the perfect setting.
Nope.
I don't have to have the environment. I don't have to have the trigger and the reward and the cue.
No.
All the things that are related with habits.
Right. You've gone through and thought about the dependencies and thought, and you start to think differently. And there's two reasons for that. I think one, you think about the dependency, so you start taking those things with you, but you've also recognized that it doesn't have to be as big as you think. So when you've got that little block of time or you've got that little opportunity, you're like, oh, you're almost excited. You're like, oh, I can take a few minutes here and read, and my streak will be done. And even if that's all you get in that day, that's okay. But it also is changing the way that you're thinking. You're thinking about reading at times that you weren't thinking about it before.
Absolutely.
And you're thinking about it every day.
Absolutely. Yeah. So as I look at this, how do you make time? You can't make time.
You
That's
can't
all there
make
is
time.
to it.
Nope.
No. Everyone gets 24 hours in a day no matter what. But what you can do is set something so laughably simple that you start with at least one paragraph daily. And then if you get more that day, great. If you don't, then guess what? You've read that day.
Right.
Now, as we streak through the summer, I guess the question that comes to my mind is, why is it that it's important to do it every day? What is it about it? In other words, we plan for it, we've looked at it, and I start to think to myself, why is it important? Can I just, because one of the comments in here was, well, just don't worry about, the number of days in a row that you're reading or something like that. I forget exactly what it was. And what I look at is, you've got to do it consistently, because that's what brings it to the level of consciousness to move forward.
Right. It's a whole, yes, you've got to do it consistently. You have to do it so that you're not starting over every time.
Right, exactly.
I'm excited to talk about this more. I'm excited in our next podcast to talk a little bit more about getting your streaks.
That was quite the little syllabic sentence that you put together there.
I'm excited to talk about more that we can do to get our streaks consistent and ready through the summer. That we can talk about thinking about your dependencies, maybe how we can have reminders involved. And the other thing I'd love to talk about is expanding your community. Is there a huge opportunity in the summer to expand your community?
I think about an experience that Abby had recently. Abby's one of our streakers, where she was vacationing with another family, and her husband and her family were vacationing with another family. And she had an experience that I think expanded the community, but it was all about keeping her streak alive, because the other person noticed that she was taking her vitamins. This was one of her streaks, is I'm going to take at least 4 vitamins daily. And she has a plethora. That's laughably simple for her, because she's got a lot of vitamins and things that she needs to take. And this person looked at her and said, how come, or how do you remember to do that? And Abby looked at her and said, well, I have a streak. And anytime you say that to anyone, I have a streak, then it raises the question of, what's a streak? Because a streak is so different than a habit or a goal or a routine. And it is, starting with a streak allows you to develop habits and routines. Starting with a streak, you build goals on top of starting with a streak. But we're going to talk more about that. I wanted to bring that up just right there at the end. There's a lot more to discuss, but talking about your summer streaks and the times and seasons, use streaking to really pull this through and buoy you up and give you the opportunity to do those things that you've maybe always wanted to do, but haven't found the time.
Right. And ways to recognize the season you're in, but to still continue to be doing the things that you want to do to become the person you want to do in whatever season you're in and through the change of your seasons.
We'd love to hear from you about your summer streaks and how you're keeping them alive at Jeffrey, or email me at Jeffrey, Jeffrey, at streakingmastery.com.
Or Jamie, Jami, at streakingmastery.com. Or
Download.
you can follow us on Instagram or Pinterest or Facebook.
Or download the app. Until we talk again.
Keep streaking.
It's too simple.